Welcome, students, to Understanding the Data Analysis Assignment Part 2. This video will lead you through what you need to do for Part 2 of the assignment. Part 1 is in another video. Part 2 is due on November 1st.
This material was taken right from the same instructions and template you've been working on so far in the assignments folder. If you haven't been working on that, then you need to put your work on that template, or I'm going to be emailing you and saying, please put this on the template itself. The reason for this is I find students get confused if they don't use the template, and then I'm trying to match up what goes where, and I'm not always clear about what everything is. So part 2 picks up with a section that asks you to create a series of bar graphs. The purpose of the bar graphs is to take the data that you analyzed in part 1 and be able to pictorially represent it so you can see the patterns and trends that will pop out. And basically you're looking for things about, do students understand the learning targets? Where are they having trouble with in the learning targets? Do individual students understand things? Which students don't understand? Which students seem to be getting it? So these bar graphs and analyses that you do in part 2 will help you with those questions. So the first one that we're going to talk about is student bar graph 1. And you can see it's the frequency of correct responses that each student got on the quiz. That is, how many did each one get right out of the 12 questions. Now, Agnes was the student, you'll recall, whose data was given to you and sort of calculated out. So I've done the bar chart here, for the bar graph here for you, and this is how I need to see it. So you could use as a title, Student Bar Graph 1. That'll help me connect it to which one it is, frequency of correct responses. And you can see she got 11 right. And so you can simply put the students across the bottom with their names and how many they got right, and that's bar graph 1. Student bar graph 2 is a little different. It's a comparison of achievement on learning targets. So on this one, instead of graphing raw scores, you're graphing the percent correct that they got on learning target 1 and the percent they got on learning target 2. And so if you look at table 2, you can see in the last 2 columns their achievement levels that you calculated from data analysis 1. So you can see here Agnes got 100% correct on learning target 1 and she got 83.3% correct on learning target 2. And those have been visually represented with the blue bar graph to the left for learning target 1 and the green for learning target 2. Again, we've done the similar title student bar graph 2 to match the template name, achievement scores on learning targets. The third graph is called class bar graph 3, a comparison of class achievement on learning targets. So this is a little different. This is not by student, and these numbers haven't been given to you. They're just numbers I made up here for the purposes of this demonstration. But you should have calculated those numbers in part 1. And this would be the bottom row, class totals, the final 2 columns. So if you imagine that the class got an 88% overall correct on learning target 1, and a class got overall a 92% correct on learning target 2. Again, these are just dummy numbers I've made up so that we'd have something to show that they did better on learning target 2, then that's what these 2 bar graphs would represent. But that's sort of how this graph has to look. Just 2 bar graphs with whatever those overall class averages are for the percentage correct. That is, if you took all the student scores and averaged them, all their achievement levels, and averaged them, what would it come to? Because you want to see which learning target your class did better on. If these were the actual numbers, you could say that they did better on Learning Target 2. But again, these are dummy numbers. Class bar graph 4 is a comparison of the students of the percent of the class that met versus did not meet each learning outcome. So there are two learning outcomes. So what percent of the class met that learning outcome and what percent did not meet it? This comes from table 3. Again, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but if you look at the second column where the blue arrow is pointing and the last column where the blue arrow is pointing, you're going to see there are 4 cells there. One for Learning Target 2, 2 for Learning Target 2, and 2 for Learning Target 1. And those are going to be represented by the blue and red bars. So again, the title is what I've been doing all along, Class Bar Graph 4, percent of class meeting versus not meeting learning outcomes. And again, I just made up dummy numbers. Here this time, you can see that that more students met the learning target than did not meet the learning target, the more greater percentage. However, it appears in this set of dummy numbers, a greater percentage struggled with learning target 2. The met and did not meet were a little bit closer. If this were the actual data, we'd say, hey, students are doing pretty well with learning target 1. Look at that blue bar. 80% met the target. So if you had said in your learning target 80%, then you would be feeling pretty good about that. But learning target 2, only 60% met and 40% did not meet. So you'd have to do a little work on learning target 2. So now we go back to one of the graphs that we've just talked about. That's class bar graph 3. You'll remember that's the achievement levels by learning target. And you're going to do a little bit of analysis. Questions A and B here ask you to look at that chart and report out some analysis. Let's look at A. Examine table 3 in bar graph 3. Which learning table target was more challenging to students overall? How do you know? So that's a little easy to do here because you can see that if we look at the achievement levels, learning target 1 in the set of dummy data, only 88% of students got that correct. If you look at learning target 2, you can see that 92% in the green bar were correct on that learning target. So obviously the learning target 1 was lower, and you could say because the achievement level 88% was lower than what they scored on learning target 2, which was 92%. Letter B is a little bit trickier. Suppose you develop a reteaching activity to reteach the students in your class who were weak on this learning target. When you reteach, you don't want to just do the same thing because it's like if somebody can't understand your language and you just say the same thing at them but say it louder. Just because you did something the same way the second time doesn't mean that they're going to pick it up. So what I want you to do instead is describe 3 formative assessment strategies you could use during the reteaching activity. So you're going to write about how you would reteach it and what 3 formative assessment strategies you would use to reteach it. So focus on what you think they might be weak in and how would you know they're getting it this time. And write a few sentences about each strategy. So we've covered lots of formative assessment strategies in class, and so pick out 3 that you like and you think might go well with this lesson and describe how you would reteach it and then what 3 formative assessment strategies are and how you would use them. This next one is more about individual learning analysis. And so you're going to need student bar graph 2. This is the one that lists all of the student scores out by learning target. And you're going to need table 1 to look at. And there's a series of questions that you're going to answer. Um, and this time we're going to zero in on a specific student, and that's the student Sam. So if you look at table 1, you'll find Sam's scores partway down. And you should just glance over what he scored well on, what he didn't score well on. And then as importantly, or more importantly, in student bar graph 2, once you've done it, look at Sam's learning target scores. So A says, with which learning target was Sam able to do well, and with which did he struggle? That's just a comparison of the height of the bars. So Agnes, for example, scored better, as we said, on learning target 1 because she had 100%. She only got an 88%. What did Sam do? B says the column headers of Table 1 contain the type of skill each question utilized. So for example, simple skills versus advanced skills. So let's think about that for a minute. There's some very simple skills, such as if a multiple choice question asks you to identify the meaning of a vocabulary word. Identify is a very simple skill. Whereas if a question asks you to analyze or create or apply, those are more advanced skills. And so if you look at the row in the data table that says cognitive process, you can see going across that each question is aligned with whether it's simple or advanced. So question 1 was a multiple choice. We know it's question 1 because it says question number 1. It was a multiple choice. It was aligned with learning target 1, and it was a simple skill, just asking students to recognize something. Question number 2 was a multiple choice, aligned with learning target 1, simple skill, recognize. Question 3 was a multiple choice, and it was aligned with learning target 2, and it was aligned with an advanced skill of analyze. So that's something that, remember, we've learned about before, which is just because it's multiple choice doesn't mean it's simple. When I give an exam, there's no exam in this class, you can be thankful, but when I give an exam, I use multiple choices that are not just, or usually pick out a word, identify something simple. I give an analysis or application type of multiple choice that presents a scenario. Students have to analyze and think about what they've learned and apply that knowledge. So you can go across all 12 questions and see what type of question it was, as we've talked about before, but also the cognitive skill and skill level that that question demanded. So let's get back to our questions that you have to answer. I'm on B. With what skill did Sam struggle, simple or advanced? So you have to look at the scores that Sam got on each type of question. You might even want to average it out. Take the simple ones and average them out. Take the advanced ones and average them out. And then you'll know for sure whether he struggled with simple skills or advanced skills. And you could actually present the averages to defend that. Then letter C, examine the items that Sam got incorrect. Consider how much content he mastered. Consider what might be influencing his achievement across those types of items. Consider the possibility that Sam is weak in mastery of the learning target or in the skill. So this is like that assignment we had where you had to think about whether a test was valid, and there were 3 questions. Do you remember that assignment? There were 3 questions on the test. Only one question assessed the learning standard. One was a math mastery question, and one was a reading main idea comprehension. And so what I wrote to some of you got that wrong was that other things could be going on here. Maybe the student knew the content, but because they struggle with reading or they struggle with math, they didn't get this question right. So ask yourself here if some other kinds of things could be going on with Sam. Does he really not know the content, or is something else going on? Right now we don't look at those individual questions, and you can see if some other things might be going on. As you write, be sure to support your argument with the data. Don't just guess. If you calculate the averages, you'll know which ones Sam got better on, simple or advanced. And so try as much as possible to support your ideas with the data. Now that you know a lot about Sam, create feedback focused on how you could help him improve. Put your exact feedback in quotation marks. We want our feedback to be very specific to Sam. So focus on both his strengths and his challenges. So I've given you an example of how you could start it below. Sam, I really like how you, and then find something in his data, in Sam's data, that you could say that's positive. You always want to start with the positive. This is the hamburger feedback. The bun is the positive. The feedback where he can improve is the meat, and you end on something positive. We call that the hamburger method of feedback. You might have heard me mention that in the course before. So Sam, I really like how you, that's our bun. Now you slip in the burger. Now I'd like you to, and do something specific and based on Sam's performance. Now I know you don't know exactly why Sam did this. You don't really know Sam. So anything reasonable I'll accept that relates to the data or the questions. Keep it up, Sam, and say something positive will happen. I know that you'll improve. I know that you're getting stronger in this, whatever you choose to do. The final part of this assignment is a reflection on the process. So this is really thinking about what you learned from this assignment. It's not a conclusion. You think about what you learned. So here's some questions to guide you. And I'd encourage you to look at these questions as you finish the assignment. Which parts of this assignment required you to think more about this topic using data to analyze and improve student performance? Which parts of the process went well for you? What was difficult? Did anything surprise you? What would you change to improve your submission if you could? What, if anything, will you take into your own classroom? What do you still have questions about? So I'm sure you can think of other questions. When you write a reflection, it's generally good to write it and then think about it for a couple of days and then come back and reread it, add something. Usually when I do that, I've sort of been thinking in the back of my mind of something else, and I'll revise it a little bit, and it results in a better reflection. So that's it. You're going to submit it along with any revisions to part 1 and upload it to the link in the assignment folder as usual. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to email me. Thank you.